Nina Tiria. I met Nina 5 years or 6 years ago now, and I feel lucky to be able to call her a fellow poet guide. She's always been a little ahead of me on the journey, and I feel lucky to follow behind her. Nina Tiria is a poet and artist in the liberatory tradition of Christian mysticism, who writes the surreal, the prophetic, and the painful. Her words have been published in Torch Literary Magazine, Apogee, Southern, Cultures, and elsewhere. Nina is probably from the bottom of the ocean, but was born in Raleigh, North Carolina. She lives in anticipation of beauty. Please welcome Nina.
All right, y'all. Let me get my tea. Christy is the reason that we're here as well. This was an idea that was born at her kitchen table a couple of months ago, and we were talking about readings, and she was like, why don't we just have a reading? So we made the plans, we made it happen, and so really it's her idea that we're here to have this moment, and so thanks. Christy talked a little bit about how you can use poetry as a way to hide. And I think for this reading, I'm trying something a little bit different. So this is going to be an experimental piece, which sort of allows me to slide in and out of view, to be hidden, but also to be seen. So this is an experimental piece that I'm presenting that documents my spiritual journey. It combines standalone poems with excerpts from my co-written book, which is called A Matter of Radical Pushback, The Political Theopoetics of the Black Imagination. It's written with two friends. One is Joe Tolbert, who's a minister, organizer, cultural critic. The other, James Epps, who's a doctoral researcher at UCLA. So this book is going to be theology and poetics combined. We're talking about Black art, Black theology, activism, and liberation. So it should be out later this year. We got the green light from our copy editor, so hopefully that can be out later. So the prose sections in this piece, or the plain speak, are excerpts from one of my solo chapters in that book. And I'm going to use the singing bowl to mark the transitions between the prose and the poems. I'll tap the bowl 3 times at the end when I'm completely done. This piece is called Roots. In Michelle E. Lee's book, Working the Roots, she wrote, "It is here where I would experience the holistic foundation of Black American culture, the spiritual connected to the physical, connected to the mental, connected to the entire community." In James Ford's book, The Holy Spirit and Preaching, he wrote, "We risk appearing unsophisticated if there is too much talk about a spiritual dimension of reality, or if we make too much space for the presence and activity of the Spirit in our day-to-day experiences. The ability to experience the sacred and to have some immediate sense of its authenticity has eroded for most people. No matter what we experience, our way of thinking requires us to try to give a scientific explanation of the factors that could have contributed to the phenomenon in question." Roots. At the beginning of 2020, I was in between jobs after an abusive and discriminatory experience with a liberal and celebrated academic publisher. I was feeling vulnerable. I was exhausted and confused. I left home on an adventure to New York City in 2016 for my graduate degree, an adventure that I believed would bring me what I sought. But now, all I knew was that it was only art that was saving me. My paintings, my poems, and the art of others. I was looking for some way to survive and keep the chaos inside me at bay. Hopelessness, buoyed by the continuous gratuitous violence on Black people on both small and large scales, left me feeling trapped. Woman with Death on Her Mind, after a painting of the same name by Carrie James Marshall. A woman with death on her mind, I begin by writing into the spill. Crave intimacy, veiled thoroughly there. How many holes are there in my body? All I feel is, I think about what to write for niggas who don't want to read anymore. For my little brother who came to me in the dream and said, I can't read all this, it's too long. There's nothing to write about anymore. The more knowledge, the more sorrow. I fantasize about never reading another book. Instead, I try to wear my own breadcrumbs. Wear heat in the sun and you're gonna fry. If you fry in the sun, you're gonna wear heat, eat. Black sunspot in magnetic flux, wanted to leave but to sizzle, it was all we had. I wanted to live a life away from, but I had star spots. Most of the options were unbearable, so I set the timeline to, I've seen a riptide. After my book is done, I will. All the feedback the city gives me is static. I was supposed to protect the page, but when I go to write, their thoughts are on me, their hands are on me. I crave the intimacy of, if you can understand me. The most unsettling reality is our own. Underneath all this, when our eyelashes brush together, the velvet of your ankle, the center of the blackberry flower that becomes the fruit of swollen symmetry. First, the petals die away. Since I left home for college, I've been searching for God. I majored in religious studies in undergrad, and this pursuit led me to social justice. Then I was in New York attending Pratt and sort of also attending groups at Union Theological Seminary at the same time, where Joe went to school. We lived near Union's campus, so I went to lectures, clubs, and events there regularly and commuted to Brooklyn for my classes. I read books from Joe's curriculum, learning about womanist theology and Black liberation theology, while I also learned about poetics and Afro-Surrealist writing at Pratt. Hanging around Union, I also met my collaborators for my first co-written book, A Matter of Radical Pushback. I didn't know where any of it would lead then. It looked like a dead end. Throughout my time living in New York, I kept having recurring dreams of running. Whether escaping a dangerous situation, just running to run, every time someone would call my name or appear to be looking for me in a dream, I would flee. I couldn't understand what it meant. I stopped praying years ago, but I had started meditating, sitting in the silence. I was writing poems from the chaos. I was attending Pratt, painting a huge garden on the wall in my apartment, and it's on the other side of that wall, if you want to see it, and writing poetry. Then I came home to North Carolina, and the realities of Black Southern life began to weaken my spirit. I had learned so much, but I just felt more sorrow. The waiting room, after Simone Lee's new museum exhibition of the same name. The morning when I woke without fear was the hospital. I wanted to know what was under my own thin drapes. Tired of being gauzy and waif, I took my life into my own hands and held it tenderly at the dog-eared corner at my favorite chapter floating on my back. I sat alone in the house that hugged me, creaking motherless room, without furniture. I came from North Carolina, from the clay and the sun, bare, from the color green, from the circle within the circle within the circle. I came from Georgia, from Alabama, looping back, from the pupil sprawl produced by colonialism. I am solid, though severed, rejecting the blue eye in light of my own thick darkness. To think of a Black woman healing herself is dangerous and desperate, her herbs rising steam. Body burden. I'm only porous because of my skin. What sharpness seeps through. Swirls up toxic in my swollen throat. Disoriented, I injure myself because I've inherited accumulation. I didn't make this world. My cells know this body is a Black woman. Most of its scars are not mine. I didn't know what my mother taught me till later. Her cup, honey and hot, and sit, listening for the still, small voice. It will be so still and so small. It will be very easy to miss. Marigold pressed and living and dried. The scars are not mine. My cells remember that this is a Black woman. Teach me my own lavender stars. We can learn to mother ourselves. The peace lily from Oteria's funeral wilted very often without water, rarely bloomed so housebound. I had never thought to love myself until standing root-bound between the structures and their unfeeling metal. Cushion the unspeakable so it finds a voiceable tone cradled in the rough, sable body. The non-merits of life, nowhere with the violets of death. We took Nina's rose bush from the old house, from the velvet woods in Alabama. It died in North Carolina without a rose. The sun took it, drought. I'm whole, but my environment affects me. Below the surface, burning white, radiation, pesticide, my roots tingle. My alchemical scalp, later a rash, retching. The morning I woke without fear, I had the second head, the third eye, the Trinity in black. The sky, the other sense, which is overlaid with static but comes through survival, disobedient and resistant, for wanting to hold my own life in my own hands. The root work, seal it up. What did I see to be except myself? I protect my body against raids with sandbags and herbs. An extra layer of earth that mental hygiene cannot penetrate, devil's ivy. I dress myself in color, with stinging nettle and sage, untwist my hair, grow myself in salt, in the bath, in the country, all alone in the house that hugged me, in the powerhouse of the cell. What runs through me? Hyacinth on the sill. I was looking in Paulo Coelho's novel, The Alchemist, for a quote to include on a grant proposal for Sweet Gum Workshop. I sat at my desk one night and I looked out into the dark parking lot through the window at the low-income housing buildings behind my 1970s built studio apartment. It was still and quiet. The full moon was bright. The previous night, Christy and I and Bethany painted the poems on our Corcoran mural. My poem went up beside the tree roots. Now, I sat at the window and used my thumb to open Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist to a random section, and it read. His hands were abraded and exhausted, but he listened to his heart. It told him to dig where his tears fell. My own heart beat a little faster. I read on. It read, in my dream, there was a sycamore growing out of the roots of the sacristy, and I was told that if I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I would find a hidden treasure. Now, sitting with my back to the door, my face to the window, an electric hum began to climb inside me. The room was warm, but the hair on my arm stood up as if my body had become aware of something outside my perception. Over and over, the inhale, the exhale, nothing visible. I looked down at the passage from The Alchemist again, recognizing the steps of my own path. I saw the first daffodils of spring. And this poem begins with an epigraph by Christy that she just read. After the difficulty, I became duller and more ordinary. I saw the first daffodils of spring. I saw God cooking dinner with a taper candle. I read the poems of my friend, and for that hour, I stopped wishing to be ordinary. I saw robins, and I saw vultures. After the vultures, I wanted to be like the people on the screens. I saw God in the most beautiful cloth imaginable, and yet in that cloth, God was the hanging thread. I saw myself in a mirror, but the reflection didn't look like the essence. I tried for an hour with baking soda and vinegar, but I couldn't scrub the soot off the fireplace bricks. Cardboard boxes keep showing up on the porch. Each morning, I perch on the edge of the bed in a pitch black room. This darkness also came concealed in cardboard. Yet when I opened it, robins flew out. In The Alchemist, the hero had taken his journey. He'd walked the desert, following his literal night dreams, found what he thought was a treasure, and been robbed of it. As for me, jobless and disillusioned with traditional churches, activism, and critical theory, I stared at the page and felt a rocking inside me. The word roots stood out on the page like it had been bolded. If I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I would find a hidden treasure. The electricity flowed through me, a kind of crescendo. Then, from the closed door at my back, I felt someone very gentle come into the room and stand close to me. I was alone in my apartment, but someone was definitely there, only I didn't see anything. This is not a metaphor. I recognized him. The presence was like the wind, but felt electric. I started to cry. I became afraid when I forgot what it was like to be a child. Perfectly happy. The dunes, smelling of jasmine. There's the feeling right before the dunes as you approach the sand that leads to the beach. You can't see the water yet, but there's wind and a keen sense of anticipation that dies away into bliss. Then the water comes into view. Perfectly happy. That anticipation, I'm chasing the feeling of revelation at water. Hear the feeling of jasmine-scented dunes just before I can see the water, only smell it. A pathway leading to the sky when I'm writing poems in my journal before bed, like old times. Then I'm standing in anticipation before the dunes. Before anxiety, it's all just beginning. I know exactly what I like, and it's permanently my birthday. I'm never anxious, but I do get so excited that I can't sleep. I'm not chasing the feeling because it's right here with me. Wraps me up in big arms, the warmest hug. The days are long. I'm dancing on the deck in my bathing suit, and there's someone new to meet and make friends with just for the day. And I don't think about jellyfish or sharks or racist old white men or taxes or doctor's offices or student loans or what's for dinner or my phone. I'm just happy to be here because I'm not afraid, and the sun is shining, and I still love my hair and my skin, and I'm not an artist. I'm just coloring to pass the time. Before crying in the shower on Monday mornings, there's a sense that something wonderful is about to happen, and it's my lucky day. And I just can't wait because I'm in my favorite place with my favorite people, and whatever it is will be taken care of. Having not yet been taught to be afraid, I'm buoyant. My vision is clear and bright, like the sunlight on the water, a pathway leading to the wide open sky. That night of the full moon in January, I encountered the tangible presence of Jesus, a person I distanced myself from for 10 years. At the moment when I needed it most, when I'd given up looking for God and trying to understand God intellectually, when I was most vulnerable and lost, I'd finally been introduced to our ancestral guide. It wasn't a functional church where Coelho's protagonist and the alchemist Santiago found his treasure. And his treasure wasn't found along the journey, although it is the journey that helps him to realize where his treasure is. It's the journey that strengthens him and gives him the wisdom for the later uses of that treasure. The treasure is in the roots of a tree growing out of the ruins of what used to be a church. Not a congregation or a pastor in designer clothing or an extravagant building. The treasure is at the very beginning of his journey, the place he first set out to get away from, the place I had set out to get away from in the beginning. The treasure is in a place that looks like no place. It looks like nothing valuable. A place where all activity has stopped. A place of stillness. A place of despair. The treasure is in a ruin. The treasure is in the roots of the tree, in the ruin, in the darkness of the lush world underneath the soil. The treasure is in the dirt. There was a sycamore growing out of the ruins of the sacristy, and I was told that if I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I would find. On the very last page of the Bible, Jesus says, I am the root. This is the poem that I painted for the Corcoran mural on the day before the presence. The unseen. Roots underneath, hidden in plain sight. Original darkness, soil of the universe. Soul, drop your skin, then it's just blood, hibiscus, rose, hip red. Original darkness of the ocean, salt fed. Soul energy of blue creation. Skin drops off at the end of eyes. Color is both a particle and a wave, and there's no vision in the blind spot. I've known a shell for you, a handful of petals on the grass. I wonder about the unseen of you, what I cannot know from just the sun on your face. On the day before the presence, I wrote, the unseen, roots underneath, hidden in plain sight. On the outside, I didn't look any different, but on the inside in that short moment, I'd finally come home. I was done running. It was a very subtle internal shift. In that moment of understanding, I accepted Jesus and I knew what it meant to be saved. There was no choir or shouting or money involved. I was just sitting at my desk, being myself, thinking about poetry, reading fiction. My treasure was where I had begun my journey, not in a congregation or a church building, but in the roots, in the parts of that experience that had nourished me, where I had first realized who I was in the Pentecostal church as a praise dancer, as a poet, as someone who used to know that there is more to this world than meets the eye. My treasure is the vital spiritual information that has been carefully safeguarded and passed on to me. Although the outer trappings of the information have morphed over time, at the root, it's the same. It's usable. Roots underneath, hidden in plain sight. It had saved my ancestors' lives, and now it had saved me. In Working the Roots, Louisa Tesh explains, what you learn from your people, that's your inheritance, all of it. It's a shame to have inherited all of that, and then have a culture twist itself so that it's not possible to really know, appreciate, and pass on the value because it's not honored. It's up to us to make sure it's passed down and honored. I didn't know the value of what I'd been given. I didn't know how to use it, so I dismissed it as untrue until this mystical experience aligned all the numbers on the combination lock of my spirit. When everything was in place, it opened. I could finally see it. I still don't understand it mentally, but the physical experience is what changed me. When Jesus came, he touched me right in the heart through my own poem, through mine and someone else's written art. I experienced the meaning of Black mystic Howard Thurman's writing that whenever Jesus' spirit appears, the oppressed gather fresh courage, where he announced the good news that fear, hypocrisy, and hatred, the three hounds of hell that track the trail of the disinherited, need have no dominion over them. There was a pinpoint of hope in the sea of despair I found myself in. Thurman reads the gospel as a manual of resistance and liberation for the poor and disenfranchised. Roots underneath, hidden in plain sight. If I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I would find a hidden treasure. My mother says, keep quiet and watch after me. I am remembering the deep root of my bones. Jesus says, I am the root. I'm a Black woman poet and artist whose ancestors were enslaved Black people, Indigenous people, and white people who were slave owners in North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. To be a creator is a right bought and paid for by my ancestors. It's my inheritance. Not far back, my maternal ancestors were farmers, mill workers, and domestics in the homes of white people as housekeepers and nannies, including my grandmother. Not far back, on my father's side, folks were farmers and teachers and counselors, including my grandfather and grandmother, who both did all three. It is now my privilege to have the time, space, and support to bring into expression what we have carried over hundreds of years. Alice Walker wrote, guided by my heritage of a love of beauty and a respect for strength, in search of my mother's garden, I found my own. As Nina Oteria, I bear the names of my great-grandmothers on both sides. My spiritual practice and work with the person of Jesus, who identified himself to me as our ancestral guide, the spirit that heals, transforms, and sustains, is the root of my creative work. I think of what Alexis Pauline Gumbs calls ancestral listening. I was walking on the beach, but my spirit was walking on the ocean floor. No perimeter, a series of haikus. Purple crepe myrtle, the shadow of the wren's wing. She is in its curve. Sunrise routine burned, escape to the surf shirking. Heart splash when she stands. Sandy wooded path. Roots, there, a perimeter. Womb makes moon demands. Womb circumference, take off wobbling, balance, burns, and answering wren. Water glider her. Sun sits down in sparkling waves, holding slick fish close. Midnight, naked, low. Pit of the stomach, green, grown. Moon sits in blue dust, morning she smooths now. Woman on open water, floating heart, the raft, a board made for flight. Feathers drift pace made to float. They want to know why. In that dark water, among the animals, she is not hosting fear. Brown-suited wren bird, learn to fly by falling far. Fear is delight in the shadow of wings. She is in their curve, splashing, no perimeter. Since that mystical experience, I've had lots of unexplainable brushes with the supernatural. I experienced a few healings that I think I call miracles. Healing from depression, insomnia, fibroids, addiction. I started to see more things in dreams. It's the experiences and the results of these experiences in my own life that convinced me that I was now on the right track. So I'm reclaiming a mystical Christianity that heals and liberates. No, I still don't attend church. I sit in the sunroom and I listen. I pray and I wait for the presence, which comes more regularly now. Numerical. This poem begins with an epigraph from Atel Adnan, which says, "We're spending life loving it exclusively because we couldn't change the world." 6. A car is a function of capitalism. We must move faster so that numbers may circulate. Money isn't real. It's just a flow of characters on screens. But if you ignore the numbers, the police will soon show up at your door. 2. The blue evening touches me on Sunday. I'm thinking about blue things before I get in my car tomorrow and ride as fast as a certain number to get to my desk at another number, then pay close attention to the numbers on the small, inaccurate moon bound to my right wrist. I put away the number screen because it makes me dizzy. 5. I ask God about time. God points to the moon, to the sunrise, and 300 starlings snatching my frosty breath from my throat as they fly. I ask God about time, and God says my veins are blue. God won't tell me how many veins I have, even though I ask. Numbers are most important to everyone except God. 3. You can't have any food or medicine unless you first pledge allegiance to imaginary numbers. I wanted to have imaginary friends when I was younger. I kept forgetting to imagine them. I was given a blue betta fish instead. I took care of his small body. My dad kept his tank clean, and he lived long for someone completely alone and in captivity. When he died, I was jumping rope. 1. Sunday morning, I woke up to a minor tornado. Recently, I dreamed of a cheetah, and my childhood cheetah print backpack never attempted to count the spots. In the tornado, I felt irritated at a man, and I thought it was true. I realized I was just tired. My body fluctuates within the month's numbers. The month's numbers would stay the same. In the dream, the cheetah looked at me intently, not skittish, as if it wanted to tell me something. Throughout the day, I wonder what numbers are on the screens when I can't see them. 8. I ask my body for information on what's happening around me apart from my senses. My body says, "What's the point? All you listen to is numbers. You're my imaginary friend. You're my pet rock." I don't know how to respond to that, so I check the time, the number in the blue dusk. 3 more hours till I pull the plug on my body's ruminations. I can't understand most of her poetry. 9. I ask God about poetry, and God says veins, the ocean, the dirt, meaning earth, the blue evening of the world's very first day. In prayer, I am under all those layers. Numbers come apart at their angles like chairs with broken legs. God winks, and I start to laugh uncontrollably. When I open my eyes, I see my first gray hair in the mirror. Numbers are distracting. I walk toward the car so that I may begin to circulate like change. It takes focus to see what's real in this rain. 4. The academy whipped me up into a frenzy of negativity. A cloud of numbers, a hailstorm of signifiers used to make the same general proposition. Now I'm moving from blue's opposite into blue. My veins increase their circulation. I'm in no hurry. I don't want to talk to any more number people because there are so many questions I have to ask God. God always makes me laugh, even in the midst of captivity, tornadoes, and my brain, my pet rock. 7. Money is a car, the self a character on a screen, a small inaccurate moon. I am a wing in no hurry. Numbers, when rotated, dissected, and collaged, resemble the flowers of poetry, which are the meanings of sunlight and blueness. This is not just my opinion. This is really what God told me. So all is not lost. This is deep work. Blue, cerulean, green, violet. The colors of the waves reminded me of a framed stereogram my grandmother had, one of those 3D magic eye posters. Jesus on the cross would pop out 3D from blue, cerulean, green, violet flecks if you only looked at it right. My dad taught me how to see the image behind the image within the flecks of color. It's this shift in perception that has saved my life from despair. The magic eye, a new way of looking at the world. The lush world inside, that informs what we perceive. In The Holy Spirit in Preaching, James Forbes wrote, "There ought to be some hint in the here and now of that power on which we will rely when death holds us in its grip. If that power cannot lift us above despair, it will be difficult to believe in its power to lift us beyond death. It's the Spirit making us remember that Jesus is our elder brother and that the legacy of glory beyond suffering belongs to us also." In Luke, Jesus said, "Nor will they say, 'See here,' or 'See there,' for indeed the kingdom of God is within you." Thank you.